Like, people who aren't involved with this, their natural thought is something happened to those motherfuckers in their fucking childhood or something. That's why they're into this shit. Yeah. And that's not true for everybody. Though, in my experience, I think a lot of people I've met do have some fucking trauma in their background.
So that's actually a pretty big myth that people who are really into kink and BDSM and, you know, all that is had a traumatic childhood or traumatic event. I mean, it certainly can be true. It's not true. Mm-hmm. But actually, you know, when we look at the research, there really is not any different.
There's no correlation. Healthy childhood here.
Well, there you go.
And I'm the most sadistic person.
I think Ghost Host, it's just the fact that, like, there's so many fucking traumatized people.
Are you saying
you can't help but have some pool of those people be into kink?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that it really, when you look at like factors that predict the sort of kinkiness or contribute to kinkiness, there's not like any sort of psychopathology that would predict it. So really, lots of people are kinky, and you really can't. There's no predictors of it, and that's true with religion and like, race also. Like, there's, you know, it's pretty widespread. The only thing is that sometimes the kink community does have higher rates of anxiety and depression, but that again because of sort of the shame associated with it.
Right.
So how do you feel about people who participate in kink for a form of therapy? Like, they come from the traumatic background, and I know a lot of people get thrown off, like, oh, you're a rape survivor, why do you want to get tied up and gangbanged? You know, like,
yeah, totally.
But then you hear people say, like, oh, it's very cathartic for me. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you feel about that? Is that a good way to go, or maybe it's just therapeutic and not really therapy?
So right, I mean, I think that's what it is that. It can be therapeutic, and it's definitely not therapy. So I, of course, am an advocate for therapy. So, I mean, I think everybody should be in therapy, not people who just had, you know, dysfunctional childhoods. But I think it can be healing.
Why is that? Why do you think everybody should be in therapy?
Oh, because everybody should have a better understanding of themselves and why they do the things they do and how to have healthier, happier relationships.
What about my self-help books?
I think, yeah, I mean, there are some people that I don't see, you know, that I see people who sometimes they'll be like, oh, I've told my partner or friends to go to therapy, and they're like, well, I read self-help books, so I don't need to. But I want to come back to this trauma. Can I answer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I want to come back to that. Using it as sort of a
more trauma,
therapeutic. Yeah. Well, I think that there can be some really healing things about using kink or BDSM as therapeutic, and I think one of them is like, you know, if you are, let's say, you know, you are a survivor of childhood abuse and you know, become some big masochist or sadist or whatever, I think something that's really healing about it is that you're communicating about it. You're something that you're doing on your own volition, and you have to have these conversations about what you want and what you don't want and your limits, and you were never able to do that as a kid when you were experiencing this trauma. So in that way, it can be like very healing to be able to get sort of control back of your experience. So I think if it's healthy, you know, again, not a substitute for therapy, but I think it can be therapeutic.
Yeah, and I mean, I talk about this, I think I bring this up kind of often when we talk, is I, as a trans person, had so many body issues when I started transitioning, and, well, before that too, but like, it was particularly pronounced once I started transitioning because, you know, I wanted, you know, to be in a different body than I was in. But, you know, when I discovered the kink community, and I am in therapy, I'll get to there. But what I found was these spaces where I expected there to be like everyone was going to be a Barbie and an Adonis, and people would, you know, scoff at me kind of the way they did in the outside vanilla world. And what I discovered was the opposite. I found a community that was body positive. They didn't react to my body.
Totally.
Other than some positive reinforcement, right? And there was sex positivity, like me being trans in those spaces was not an issue, so I didn't feel like a stranger. They didn't, you know, make me feel othered. So there was just in the community itself in kink, there was a lot of self-acceptance that I was able to work through.
Yeah.
I have an angel on my shoulder, but a devil in my head.